Is that good?
Yeah, that looks good. The only thing that looks bad is that Charles Loloma should probably be in my gallery. That's around
Ah,
the neck. That's the only thing I would say. Wow, did you dress up nicely? All right,
oh no, just my Western blouse.
yeah, and your Charles Loloma necklace. I'm assuming
Oh, you
Charles.
recognized it. You
Oh yeah,
recognized.
oh
Yeah, I've
yeah,
also got the ring. Oh,
oh
which
yeah,
one is
oh yeah. Oh, did you get those from Charles?
yes.
You did. So you knew
You know,
Charles.
I carried him in Jackson Hole. I carried Charles Loloma.
Wow, I didn't realize that you carried Charles. How did you find him?
I'm through my friend, the famous jeweler gallery and jewelry owner on Main Street. I can't think of her name
Oh
right now.
yeah, Lavina Ole.
Lovina. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Lovina and I were friends. And when I said I was opening or buying this gallery in Jackson Hole, she said, and I said, who could you help me with? She said, well, I could let you have Charles Loloma. And so that's how I got him.
Wow. Do you know how that's such an amazing thing that she would do that because Charles Loloma was like the big
I
deal,
know.
and she's literally giving it to another gallery. That means
I know.
not going to get as much material. Why do you think she did that? I'm just curious.
I really don't know, except that I sort of begged. I was getting started, and I really loved Charles' work, and had met him, and I'd met his daughter, isn't it? But anyway, she said, well, she says, I can't promise, but I will speak to Charles and say you're going to call him, and that's what happened.
Wow, that's very cool. Hats off to Lavina Ole. Um, I have Christine Mollring on today. We've already started, Christine, and we're on the Art Dealer Diaries here. And so this is going to be a very interesting podcast for me because you have such a long, unique history, not just as an art dealer and in Western art, but as a person too. Your story, I got to read some of it, so I have a sense of part of it is so unique. But I mean, you ran and owned Trailside Gallery in many different cities and states, and so we'll go through all that. But I think to get to the basis of who you are, we have to start in Brazil, right?
Yes, I was born in Santos, Brazil, of British parents. They were both Londoners. And yes, and I learned to speak Portuguese and English at the same time.
And you also speak French and Spanish as well?
I speak Spanish and I speak French, which was the diplomatic language in Brazil at that time, not English.
And so your dad, what did he do that brought him
My
from
dad,
London?
my dad was in communications telegraphist, and he signed up when he was 17 years old in London. They were asking for young men to go to South America to work in telegraphy for Western Union, and he signed up and he chose Brazil.
And was this like the early 30s?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yes, I was born in 32, so it was early 30s.
Yes. So before World War II, obviously.
Yes,
And so he experienced World War II in Brazil, right?
that's right. But all his brothers were in the RAF in England, and he got so sick because he didn't go and join up, but he got tuberculosis, unfortunately.
Yes, and
So
when he got tuberculosis, you had to move from where you were to another
yeah,
place, right?
we moved up into the mountains, and then we had a private governess because there was no English school.
And so you're born in 32, and
Yes,
so you remember World War II.
I do.
Yeah, very much so, right? I would think.
I do.
Yeah. And how did do you think that affected you in certain ways that persist today? I mean, that's a long time ago.
No, not at all, because I was in Brazil the whole time, in Santos, and the only thing that we were affected by was that we had to do blackout because we lived on the ocean
Mm,
and the beach. And so we had blackout during the war, but that was no big deal.
yeah.
And I had a good time with my mother. We went to help my father, who was head of the missions to seamen, to dance with all the officers and off the naval, English and American naval ships. And so we
Right.
had a very good time.
Okay. You're a young woman. So, yes. And were you interested in art at this time when you were growing up as a child and as an adolescent?
Well, I've always been exposed to it because my parents believed in, the first time I was hauled to Europe was 4 years old. And I think I went to all the museums with them. And that was my introduction to looking at art. And it was something that was instilled in me because every time we went anywhere, they took me to the museums of art.
Hmm. Was your mom interested in art as far as did she make art or create?
Who?
Your mother. Your mother.
No, my mother, no. I mean, she was just, interested in going to museums and seeing what's out there in the different countries.
Yes. And so then as you mature and you get through high school and you're getting ready to, go to college, I assume, right? What was your path from there? You're still in Brazil, right?
Well, I was in Brazil, but I was a ballet dancer. My mother taught ballet at the club, and I started at 4. And so I danced ballet for 10 years. And I thought I was going to go back to London after the war with my grandmother and sister to go to Sadler's Wells Ballet School.
Mm-hmm.
But the communications weren't good those days. And my father was sick, and they could only take me when I was 18. And I was 15, and he couldn't afford to give me private tuition. So he gave me a choice, boarding school or go to work. And I chose go to work. So I took a crash course in business at Pitman's College and went to work for Lord Vestey in the meatpacking business.
And where was this? This was back in England?
Yes, this is in London.
Yes, this is in London. And so what did you do in that job?
I was in the typing pool of Lord Vestey.
And who was Lord Vestey? Because I don't know.
Lord Vestey was a very important man who owned all the meat packing in England.
Oh, yeah. So very important.
Very important.
Yeah, yes. And so how long did you stay at that job?
Well, it was only about a year and a half. And my parents were moved from Brazil to Argentina. And so they said, get on a ship and come to Argentina, which I did.
All right. And how old are you at this time? You're very young, right? 19 or so? 20?
I was, no, not that much. Actually, I was only, at that point, I was 15 and a half to 16. 16.
Oh, wow.
16 going on 17, but I was 16. And I had the best time of my life in Buenos Aires. I adored Buenos Aires.
Uh-huh. And what were you working then? Did you go back to work?
I certainly was. I worked for the competition to Union Cold Storage. I worked for Swift de la Plata, Swift Packing Company, because they offered me twice the money.
And how long did you stay there and work in Argentina?
Well, that was about a year and a half too.
Uh-huh.
Because at 18, my parents were moved back to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with All America cables and radio, and I had to go along. And so I went back to Brazil with them.
And then what? Where did you go from there? We're going to get it all.
Well, I was there for a while.
Yes. Yes. In Brazil.
I was there for a while, and then I got married. I met someone and got married, actually to somebody who my parents wanted me to marry.
Yes.
And I had 2 children. I had Christopher and Jennifer.
And so when you're And you're still in Brazil, correct? At that time
Mhm,
when you get
mhm.
married. All right. And so what happened then?
Well, then I got married and I was working for Paramount Films of Brazil. Then I got into the film business on the distribution end.
Uh-huh.
And so then I was married for 10 years and it didn't work out. Um, and there was no divorce in Brazil. And I had to get away from the situation. So I came to the United States to get a divorce.
And you were 28 at that time, approximately?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you came to the US with your kids?
Well, I couldn't bring them because he didn't allow me to bring any children.
Ah,
I went back, and with the help of a nanny who I left there, she helped, and because he married her, and I got Jennifer.
I see. And
That's
so Jennifer and you moved to the States at that point.
yes.
And you landed in Jackson Hole. Is that where you landed?
No, I landed in Denver, Colorado, and my father's friend was going to Wyoming the next day, and he said, "I have attorneys there, friends that can get you divorced." And so I jumped in the car and went.
Mm. And
And
so you're like 28 and you're getting a divorce in a completely foreign country, a single mother as well. Um,
right.
and so what was your thought? What were you going
Well,
to
I
do?
had to go to work, and I went to work for um, Pan American Petroleum Company. So got into the oil and gas business
Uh-huh.
and went to work for them. And 3 months later, I got my divorce, and I met Ted, whom I married eventually, at the Central Wyoming Fair and Rodeo.
So had you moved from Denver to
Oh
uh
yes, I Denver was just overnight, and I
I
was
see.
off to Wyoming.
And was that in Jackson Hole? Is that where you were?
No, I
Right.
landed in Denver, Casper, Wyoming,
Casper, Wyoming. And why Casper?
because that's the way he was driving to Nebraska and dropped me off with these people from Shell Oil.
So
They were at a divorce,
I see. So you ended up in Casper and you were still
right?
working oil and gas, right?
Yes,
Okay. And then you met Ted at the rodeo.
I met Ted at the Central Wyoming Fair and Rodeo.
And it was you just decided you would go see the fair? You thought it would be interesting? You probably never been to a rodeo, right?
No, I've never been to a rodeo, but actually, I didn't meet him there. I saw him perform,
Hmm.
and then we all went to a saloon in Casper,
Yeah.
uh, called the Reef Bar, and we all met there. There was 14 girls from Pan American, and Tom and Ted, his brother, and that's how we met.
I see. And so it didn't take you long to find love, which is nice. And you got married fairly soon after that?
Oh no, no,
Oh,
we it was 2 years.
oh, well, that's normal then. He courted you.
I,
That's good.
well, no, I told him I wasn't going to say marry him until I knew that he and Jennifer would get along,
Yeah,
and
it
I had to
makes sense.
go and get her.
Right. And so how long did you stay at the petroleum place that you were working?
It was about a a year again.
Okay. And then what happened?
Enough money to go back to Brazil and get Jennifer.
I see. And then what did you do?
Well, I came back. Uh, I came back, and Ted met me at the bottom of the stairs in Denver, and he and Jennifer hit it off, and we went off to the in Wyoming to the not White Mountains. What do they call them? Oh gosh, I'm getting all mixed up with my mountains. But anyway, we went off together, and we were on our way to Cody,
Mhm.
Wyoming, where he had just gotten a job, and off we went. And we landed in Cody, and we got married there. We were the first wedding in the church in Cody, the Episcopal church.
And had you gone to any art galleries yet at this point?
Actually, no, not really.
Not yet.
And this was my first introduction to wonderful art, was at the Buffalo Bill Historical Museum. And then I spent a lot of time in that and in the Historical Museum, sort of boning up and things, and loved it. And so that's where I really got introduced.
Was in Cody.
Right.
At the Buffalo. Yeah, that's a tremendous museum. Just an amazing museum.
And the Alfred Jacob Miller retrospective's on there, and I'm going in August to see it.
Oh, that's very cool. Well, Alfred Jacob Miller actually went with one of my relatives, Bill Sublette.
Really?
Yep.
Really?
He was on the trip with him. Yeah, that's where he would go. It was much safer to go with a trapper, and Bill Sublette opened the Oregon Trail.
Well, you know where I am at. I'm in Sublette County. You know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but yes, that's my relative. That's all from Bill Sublette.
You all talk about Sublette here because it's called Sublette County.
Yep, that's from Bill, who was a relative of mine.
Now that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you should be on a podcast. See?
No, I'm not Bill Sublette. I'm just related to him. So, and so when you work for the petroleum company, and then what's your next form of work? I know you're a mother and you're, and a wife now, but what do you do now?
Well, I went back to get Jennifer, and then we went off to Cody. And in Cody, I did not work. And of course, Ted then was, had a job. And so we were there until he got itchy feet, and his ex-father-in-law, because he was married before, said, come and run these theaters for me in Hollywood. I need someone to run the theaters. And you've done it before. And so off we went to Hollywood. We lived in the San Fernando Valley, and I went to work for Warner Brothers. Had a wonderful job there.
Yeah, what was your job?
Well, I was executive assistant to the International Public Relations and Publicity Director of Warner Brothers.
Yeah, because you could speak languages, and
I could speak the 4 to 5 languages.
Yes,
and took all these VIPs and royalty and everybody that visited from all over the world. It was a fascinating job.
Who was one of the more interesting people that you interacted with in that job? Do you remember?
Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., who's at the FBI series, and he became a very good friend. And also Frank Sinatra, who was just below my office, and we used to wave it to each other because he had a skylight.
And did you get to talk much to Frank at all?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What was he like?
Wonderful.
Nice guy.
I loved his music, and he gave me all his records, the ones with the hole in the middle.
Yes, right.
I have
the vinyl from Frank Sinatra. And so what year was that approximately that you were
let's see, when was I in Hollywood? I had that written down for you somewhere, but I can't find it now. It must have been because I went to Wyoming. I got that down when I went back to Wyoming in 1969. So I would say that was in the mid-60s.
The mid-60s. Okay.
Mm.
So, yeah, which was an interesting time frame. Vietnam was starting to really rock and roll as well as rock and roll was rocking and rolling.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And so how long did you work at Warner Brothers?
I worked for them, I think, 2 to 3 years.
So that's 65 to 67. And then what happened?
Then Ted said, I've had it with Hollywood, and I've had it with the traffic. I can't stand it. I'm going back to Wyoming. I said, well, what are we going to do in Wyoming? You don't have a job. I don't have a job. He says, I don't know, and I don't care. Off we went. That was it.
That was a big change. I mean, you have a job that you have a lot of power and authority, and you loved it.
Loved it.
Yeah, that had to be a big decision, but clearly
it was. Well, I wasn't involved in the decision. He said, I'm going back to Wyoming.
Yeah. Well, you could have said, I'm not going with you, but you chose not
Well,
to, you know.
I chose not to do that.
Yeah, clearly. And it was the right move, because that's why you're on this podcast right now, because of what happened, because you did say, okay, let's go. So you head back to Wyoming, and this time you end up in Jackson Hole.
No, this time, where did I end up from there? No, it wasn't Jackson Hole. Let me think a moment. Well, we came to Pinedale, Wyoming. Yes, it was Jackson Hole. We came to Pinedale, Wyoming, and Mr. Harrower, who was a longtime resident here in Pinedale, said he was opening this gallery on the square in Jackson Hole called the Rendezvous Galleries, representing exclusively the art of Carl Rhodes, who Rockefeller brought out to the Tetons to do all the murals in Jackson Lake Lodge. And that's how I got into my love with Alfred Jacob Miller, because this was all based on the early fur trade. So Carl Rhodes had studied Alfred Jacob Miller's and Bodmer's and Catlin's work exclusively. So before he did these murals.
And the Rendezvous Gallery, you ended up working for him at the Rendezvous Gallery?
I was a director.
Oh, you were the director. And how did you get that job? Because you hadn't had any, I mean, you had done a lot of different things, clearly, but you hadn't worked in an art gallery or in the art field.
Harrow needed a director. I said, I know nothing about the Western art business. I know a lot about art, nothing about the Western art business. And I've never been in sales, but of selling art. He said, well, I'm desperate. I have no one. So that's how I got into the art business.
And so was who all was in it was just the one artist. That was it.
Just the one. And then finally, because we couldn't make it with the sale of this one artist, first of all, the tourists that come to Jackson weren't looking for that. Right. He was, it was very high end, beautiful things, but it wasn't
right
Western art, what I would call Western art.
Right.
And so I said, we've got to do something, otherwise you're not going to be able to keep the doors open. So I contacted these people called Ulrich, a family who were digging for fossils in the shale in Kemmerer, Eocene fossil fish. And I'd seen some of them and they were fascinating. And I said, would you like an outlet to sell those? Well, I got into the fossil art business. So we sold the hell out of fossil fish, Eocene fossil fish.
So you got to become an expert on paleontology as well, selling fish, right? Was that the first gallery that you know of that was selling fossils like that, by the way?
Nobody's ever sold them before.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, it's such a huge business now. And so that was maybe 67, 68-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. And how did you know to do that, to go, this is something that would sell?
I just knew we had to get something different that nobody had on the square in Jackson, something appealing, and it appealed to me greatly. And then we sold kits, do it yourself.
Yes.
Where you use a dental tool and you scratch the shale and you get to the fish.
Yes.
I was made demonstrations and sold the hell out of these kits, I'll tell you.
Yeah. And a lot of those fossils have now become extremely valuable.
Oh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, we see them in Tucson because of the Gem and Mineral Show. So those guys come down from Kemmerer.
Do they?
Oh, yeah.
They still come?
Oh, yeah. All those people do. Yeah. I mean, there's a zillion fossil places in Kemmerer. I went to that area just to see that, and the J.C. Penney's, the founding J.C. Penney store is right there.
That was the first store that I ever went to in Wyoming and bought something, was the J.C. Penney store in Kemmerer.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. And for those who don't know, that was where it began. J.C. Penney started it in Kemmerer, Wyoming.
That's exactly right.
Which is now moving away from coal and building a nuclear plant there. I don't know if you know that. But
I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah, they are. So
that's where I got citizenship too in
Yeah.
camera.
So when you work at Rendezvous Gallery, you're the manager, you bring on the
Right.
the fossils. And so how long did that last and where did you go from there?
Well, there I was probably quite a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yes. So you really got to learn sales and art and
Yes,
develop a client base as well.
exactly. And then I boned up in the library after work. Every single evening, I went to the library to read up on history of the United States, history of the West, and art, the Western art.
And Ted at this time was starting to do real estate?
Yes, he was selling ranches.
Yes. So, which also was a good time for him to be doing that.
Right.
Yes. And so where was the next gallery? What did you do from there, from the Rendezvous Gallery?
Well, then I that didn't work out too well after a while. Mr. Hero was very difficult, and I went to work for the Jensen Galleries, which was an upstairs gallery on the square. And so I went to work there, and Dan May actually and his wife were the summer managers. And I hired to be the year-round manager. So for 3 months, I worked closely with the Mays. Yes.
Who end up, yeah, I was going to say they end up opening their own gallery in Scottsdale.
Yes,
and
that's right.
And doing quite well, as a matter of fact.
Right. And then for the Jensen Galleries, it came to my attention that the Trailside Galleries was going to be sold. And I said to my husband, that's where I really would like to own, is the Trailside Galleries, because I spent my lunch hours in there looking at all that wonderful art in there. And so Ted went to inquire, and he says, we can't afford it. But he said, let me see what I can do. And so he was an entrepreneur, and he ended up convincing the people that they should sell it to us over 5 years.
Was that Dick Flood that owned it at that time?
Dick Flood had sold it to Ginger, as you know, Renner, but she was shipped. And her partner was the one that had everything in Palm Springs, the citrus and all that.
So Dick Flood, who started this gallery,
yes,
he started in 65 or so. 62.
Yeah.
Yes. And he had people like Clymer was one of his artists, right? And Tom Lovell and some of these.
Brownell McGrew.
Yeah.
Rob Michelle, to remember a few, and some of those really Tom Lovell.
Yes.
And Robert Lockheed.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I inherited them all.
Yeah, so you bought it from Renner, and what year was that you took over?
Renner, I wrote it down here. 1971.
In 71. So that really, Western art in 71 was just starting to kind of really take hold, wouldn't you say? I mean, that was right when the Native American, squash blossoms and everything, there was this whole revival, the Wounded Knee and all this, awareness of Native art was happening, and Western art. That was really kind of the start of it, wouldn't you say?
I would say that was the start of it, as I see it too.
Yes, I do. I would say that's exactly right too. And I think a lot of those older Western artists had even kind of been lost and just, they weren't in the scene. I mean, even people like Maynard Dixon, people knew him and understood it, but he wasn't a big thing, really. No, none of them were. Maybe Charlie Russell and Remington, but otherwise not really, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yes. So you start 71, and what was your goal? Did you have a goal or what you were hoping to accomplish? You'd been in that for a while.
Well, yeah, my goal was to, really learn the business more and see if I could encourage new artists to and there was a lot of talent I was seeing out there. And they used to knock on our door practically daily, showing their wares,
I bet.
And so, but then after being there for one whole summer, and we went into fall and winter, there was hardly any business. I said to Ted, this isn't going to do it. And we've got to open somewhere where we can offer the artists a year-round, coverage, and we can sell their work year-round. And so we came down to Scottsdale and looked around, and so we bought the gallery. I wrote it down here. Let's see, in 1972, we purchased the Jensen Galleries. Let's see. 1975, we opened the gallery in the Scottsdale Mall.
Yes. And you took over, and then that building you stayed in forever, right? And expanded as well.
Yes. Well, we started with one. We only could afford one suite. Then we got a second suite. And then after 2 years, we got the whole building.
And so by 75, when you're in Jackson Hole, you're in Scottsdale, were you considered to be the leader in Western art, would you say, at that time? Was that?
Well, I didn't know it myself, but I believe that I was one of them. But Dick Flood was competition. Dick Flood on the street, Main Trail Galleries, and Lavina O was there in the jewelry, and that was about it. I think we were the two main Western art galleries.
Yeah, and then you had like Gilbert Ortega was doing Indian art.
And that Gilbert Ortega was doing the Indian art.
Yeah, and he kind of expanded exponentially in the late 60s, early 70s with the boom of native art. So he did
a wonderful job.
Yeah, he had like buildings everywhere. I know. I can remember this guy that it seemed like every corner there was an Ortega's at some point. So you are you opened the second one, and then you also didn't you open a gallery in the airport? Didn't you open one in the? I
did and I wrote that down. In 1975, I opened there. Oh, and in 1980, I opened the satellite gallery at Terminal 3, Sky Harbor.
Now, so why did you do that? Because that was the first. No one had ever done anything like that, right?
Yeah, there was no fine arts gallery in the world in an airport.
Yeah.
I did it because that way we met the people and sent them down to our gallery in Scottsdale.
And but you had art and you could sell them art right there in the terminal.
Oh, right? Yeah. But it was very small, but it was really what I wanted to do, sort of a showcase with a smattering of what we had in the big gallery and, sculpture and whatever. And we just sent them on down the gallery, and it was just a wonderful fit.
So it was a successful venture to be, and you were there for like 6 years or so, something like that?
Well, no, maybe 5,
5 years. Yeah. And so why did you end up going, okay, I don't need this extra gallery? Was it just that it's too much to try to handle?
Well, it was just the usual thing, getting the help.
Yeah. Okay. So just trying, because it's not easy to get in and out of airports and all that.
No.
And you have to have somebody that can explain what it is in a very succinct fashion. And you're selling to people that are coming and going in a very quick fashion. So,
yes. And you really got, just got so many 15 minutes to get going there.
Yeah. I could see that being a totally different environment to have to sell in.
Yeah.
One that I would.
Well, my daughter, Jennifer, was there for 6 months. And she says, oh, mother. And I come back to the main gallery.
And did you open in a hotel like the Four Seasons or something?
I did. It was a brand new Four Seasons downtown Houston.
Yes.
And I wrote down when I opened that. That was in 1982, and I called it the Mollring Gallery.
I see. And that was about the time oil and gas was having a problem, wasn't it?
Well, the timing was horrible.
Yes.
And we opened in 82, and then they had that whole thing collapse. And so we were there for about a year and a half. We sold it to John Connolly.
Yeah. And he was the governor of.
He was the governor at that time.
Yeah. And I think that's important to understand, and people recognize that, you're very successful. But even as successful as a gallerist can be, even maybe being the leader in the field, sometimes the economy and the pressures just don't work out. And the best thing you can do is recognize this isn't working out and closing it.
That's what we sold it to Connolly and got out of the Four Seasons.
Yeah. So and how long did he stay? Did he stay there with that gallery for very long?
Well, he didn't stay there, but he opened somewhere else in Houston. I can't quite remember where.
Yes.
And so he and Alterman, I think, joined up.
Okay. Tony Alterman.
Remember? I think he and Alterman joined up.
Yeah.
And they had a gallery. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's how Tony probably got his start.
That's exactly right.
Unfortunately, Tony and Richard are both now passed, so I can't talk about them, but they were also big components in the Western art as well, especially in the 80s or the 90s, I would say.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you closed the Mollring Gallery, that was in what year was that? That was like 92?
It would have been 1983, 84.
83, yeah, that's when they had that's when the oil bust.
Yeah.
Big time. I remember that. And so what happened from that point? How many galleries do you have the Scottsdale one and the Jackson Hole one?
That's it.
And you go, okay, this is enough.
Yeah.
Yes. And
no, we opened in Carmel.
Oh yeah, okay. Why Carmel?
Well, we bought the Gallery Americana in Carmel.
So you are still in the mindset of expand, if it's the right thing.
If it's the right thing.
Yeah. And Carmel, you could see, was a place that had lots of wealth and is beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that it was not the right market for me, because it was more of the tourists there was more decorator art.
Yes.
Right. And so I did not do well with the higher end art there at all. And I quickly got out of that one.
Yeah. How long? You were there just a couple of years?
Yes. I got out of there because it was not right for me. I don't like decorator art. I don't want to sell decorator art.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, you have to be, as a gallerist, you have to recognize when things aren't working, whether it's an artist that, just an art type that doesn't work for you, or a location. I mean, that's why you do well, is you got to make these decisions. And so you close that, but you're very effective in Scottsdale and also in Jackson Hole. Who were some of the artists that you were representing at that time, kind of the late 80s, early 90s?
Well, all what I consider my top guys, John Clymer and Lockheed and Lovell, and then the sculptors, of course, was Larry Jackson, right, was our big sculptor that we sold tons of his sculpture. And actually, we broke a record. We had ever in Wyoming, Arizona, $1 million sale.
And that was Harry Jackson?
Yes.
Yes. And was that paintings and sculpture, or just sculpture?
No, it was just his sculpture.
Yeah, just a sculpture. And what was he like to work with?
Yes. Oh. I don't want to be sued.
I got it. I understand.
No, he was a character, and but thank goodness Ted knew how to handle him.
Yeah. Okay.
So we made out okay.
Yeah. And what was Ted's role in the gallery?
Ted's role in the gallery was really more as support, And one time, just to tell a quick story, one time I had this big exhibition and he knew how tired I was. And he said, well, if you lay them all out where you want them the night before, I'll go in at 5 in the morning and hang them all for you.
Yeah.
Well, I came in at 8 o'clock and they
Yeah.
were all on the floor still. So that was the end of Ted's helping me. That's, I need to say no more. Whereas as far as the gallery was concerned, he meant well, but
yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, you were determining all the artists. You were determining everything on this.
Yes.
Yeah, it was your field, but he was your companion
and support.
Support, which is always very important. Yeah,
absolutely important.
Yeah, and so
I don't say that his personality didn't help with a lot of clients.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean,
the Rockefellers loved him, and the Firestones loved him, and I mean, he was just everybody's favorite,
And he continues to sell real estate in Jackson Hole. Is he doing that in Phoenix as well, in Scottsdale?
Oh, no, he died 6 years ago.
Yes, but did he continue to sell real estate all along?
The ranches pretty much came to a screeching halt, of course, when we moved to Phoenix.
Yes. Okay. And so you've been in the business for quite a while. At the point you start in the 60s, and now you're getting into the early 90s, and you end up selling your gallery at some point in the 90s, right?
Well, yes. I think I don't have that written down here. Yes, I sold it to Eddie Basher, Roxanne Hoffman, and Marie Von Leche in the 90s, 94, I believe.
Yeah, 94. And so
94.
And why was it that you decided to sell? What was the
pressure from Ted that he was tired of my working and not being with him?
Got it.
And so reluctantly, I sold it. But what happened then was that Mary Vaughn started trying to run it, was unable to. And she said, could you possibly come and help me again to train me? Because I don't know how you did it, but I can't, I've got to learn more. So I went back and worked 10 years more at Trailside without being the owner.
I see. And was that difficult to do that?
No, but except that it was only difficult that I wasn't making the profits.
Yeah. So part of you really was still like, I love this, and I like being around the artists, and and she understood the what you brought to the table, which helped her. I mean, that's a 10-year period of being able to be tutored basically from somebody, and now she's done that she's had that gallery for 30 something.
Oh, she still does.
Yeah, 35 years she's owned it, or maybe longer. Yeah, maybe 35 or so. Yeah, a long time anyway.
Long time.
Yeah, and so finally you said, okay, this is enough. I've got to.
Yeah. Well, then I did my bit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Right. And you let that go, and then she does her thing, and she's been very successful.
Oh yeah.
Very successful.
Now and then they'll ask me something, but very rarely.
Yeah.
And for a customer, that I had but I turned over all my files to them. I didn't take them.
Yes. I think those files, by the way, and maybe if Mary Vaughn's listening to that as well, those files are extremely important as a record of history. Those should end up in a university setting at some point. They shouldn't be just, and especially because they were written files back in those days. Now we just have things that are on computer files, but those are all really important, components of what Western art is.
Well, I tell you where I want them to go, and I don't know, this is not really for publication yet, because it's something in a dream and in the works of Jennifer, my daughter, and myself, that when, Buzzard Sands gave the museum $12 million
Yes.
to build a wing. And so Jennifer's and my idea, and Buzzard sounds likes it. We were going to have a room with archives from all what you're talking about, people pertaining to art and history of the art business of the art in this room, so scholars can go there.
That's wonderful. That's yeah, and there's nothing like that. That's right.
No,
I mean, there's
and that's
yeah.
It's going to be part of the Western Regional Institute.
Yeah.
We call it center. So this is what our dream is, and I hope it will be a reality.
Yeah, well, those kind of special library collections are very important. So for me to do research on Maynard Dixon, I had to go to the Sacramento State Library. They have a special collection, and most of his paperwork are located there. So, but people like myself who have large collections of paperwork from an artist like Maynard Dixon that I've collected over 30 years, those have to end up somewhere at some point, hopefully. And collections like what you are talking about of your own life and what you've done, those are, because you have price structure for what they were and who they were and all these things. These are important.
But I'm not talking about housing myself. I'm talking about, like, for example, the Sands family.
Yeah, sure.
Mrs. Sands has numerous files and records of the history of Phoenix, and those kind of things can be donated to this and be in that library.
Yes, those are important things. Those are very important things.
Right.
And so that has become the Western Spirit, which is, Scottsdale Museum of the West. That has become a very important component of what you do. And
of my life.
Yes, of your life. And you were involved in kind of getting that going to started as well, weren't you, early on?
Well, Jim Bruner and we were just talking to Sandy today because she had to remind me of certain things. Was that Jim Bruner and I put the spade in the ground for the museum, for the city, and it is in the newspaper, so it's in the archives.
Yeah, and it took a long time, right? I mean, the talk of trying to start to do this museum has been decades, right?
Well, we couldn't. I mean, it was a bad time to raise money.
Yes.
To start this museum from scratch,
Yeah. And now, how long has the museum been open?
Well, it was since early 1980s, wasn't it?
Not even later than that. So, yeah, I mean, it's only been the museum, Western Spirit's been open for maybe 6 or 7 years or so.
A little longer, I think. Well, maybe 6 or 7 years.
Yeah,
I should have, but my books
I
wrote.
I should know it. I should know it too, because I've been involved, and I think it's been about 6 or 7 years, something like that.
It's about, well, I think it's actually maybe 7 or 8 years now. But anyway, whatever it is, doesn't matter.
It does go fast. So for those people who may not know what Western Spirit is, this is a museum in Scottsdale, Old Town Scottsdale, that has dedicated its mission to Western and Native American art of all types. So they have an amazing permanent collection of Hopi pottery, spurs from Abe Hayes, and they have a John Coleman
paddles.
And John Coleman, actually, you and Ted donated or founded the sculpture garden at the museum, right? Where a lot of right?
That was the seed money to get started on the museum.
Yes. So it's a great museum. It's one of my favorite museums in the world.
Well, it's certainly my favorite.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's because they've done just terrific stuff, and they are focused on Western and Native arts, and not just traditional Western art. It can be contemporary as well. There's great Fritz Shoulders in there, and all sorts of things that are on the Ed Mel, things that are on the farther spectrum of maybe what we consider Western art.
Absolutely. And we are very proud of the museum and have great plans. ahead, and we actually, a matter of interest, having a Carl Roters retrospective in 2024.
So that'll
where
be
Tim
first
Peterson,
circle.
yeah, so when Tim Peterson, who's one of our main donors, trustee donors, he has a large collection of rotors, and between his and mine, and the ones my children have, it's going to be quite an exhibition.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, that would be great. When is that going to happen? In the near future?
I don't have a set date, but it's 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Probably towards the fall.
Yeah, that's coming up. All right.
Mhm.
And so you're still commuting now from Scottsdale to Jackson Hole, right? And you're
Well, not so much Jackson Hole. I think I've left that behind. I'm in Pinedale.
you're in
In the
Pinedale.
Twin River. Yeah,
Well,
Sublette County.
I
Just in your family's backyard,
I
dear.
know. Have you gone to the Mountain Man Museum there?
Have I gone? I'm
Yeah.
one of the one of the
Found.
initiators of that museum.
Well, let's talk about that because I have a dog in that hunt. So when did you start that museum? When was that? I've been to
Oh
it.
God. Jesus. Let's see. It was already there when I went to Trailside. I think so. That would have been what, 20 years ago?
Oh, even further. Yeah, of trail. Yeah, even
15
more.
years ago, something like that.
Yeah. And so for those who don't know about the Mountain Man Museum, maybe you could tell them a little bit about what that is, what the museum is in Pinedale.
Well, the Mountain Man Museum is to continue the knowledge for future generations of the early fur trade,
Yes.
which and that's basically what it is. It's early fur trade, and it's like Alfred Jacob and Bodmer and all of those, and the Western artists of today that are doing the fur trade or painting the fur trade,
Right.
and there are many, and it's a wonderful museum also.
It is. Yeah, it's got great exhibits showing kind of the things that were going on. Plus, they have actual letters. Like I know my relative's letters, William Sublette, has a bunch of different letters that are on exhibit that you can see.
Oh,
So,
yes. I just saw them the other day.
Yep, from the 18. I think
They're right in the entrance.
Yep. Yep.
Wonderful.
I love Pinedale. I think it's a great place.
I adore Pinedale. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I had to sell my ranch here because I thought I couldn't run it without Ted.
Yeah. Well, probably true to some extent. Hard, That's the norm.
That's true.
But that's the normal way of life, really. Is
Yeah.
we have objects, we have things, we do things, and then at some point we have to let go of those objects and we have to entrust them into other hands and other people. And as an art gallerist, you know this as well as anybody because you handled lots of estates and collections. I'm sure that people got to a point where they go, okay, I just I need to find the next home.
That's right.
That's our job, actually, to some extent.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that. Yeah. It really is true.
It's
really true.
Yeah, no, and I know I'll be at that point at some point too. My son's in the business, so I'm fortunate, and your daughter loves art, so that's fortunate. But at the same time, we do have to deal with those kind of things. So, but Pinedale is a fun place. I could see living there. That would be fun being Sublette in Sublette County, I guess.
Yes. And guess what? I've just told them you're going to receive all my Rogers paintings.
Oh, wow. Very good. And they're going to go to the museum there?
Yes.
Oh, nice. Another reason to go visit the museum again.
Yeah. All of them are going there, and my the children have promised to give theirs too.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So how you've been in this business, you've seen this, you've helped build at least 2 museums. You've been a trailblazer. And one thing I'd like to know, you've been a woman in a man's business when it comes to Western art. And I'm sure there were some things that you had to deal with that other people didn't have to deal with.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you care to share any of those?
Well, maybe not today.
But they existed, and that was something you had to deal with, right?
Well, they existed for sure.
Yeah.
But I overcame them.
Yes. And I think things have changed. I think things have changed a lot in that.
Oh,
Yeah.
they
But especially when you were doing it, starting it like in 71. I mean,
oh,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, you were it.
Man's world.
Yeah. You were probably
Man's
the
world.
only one, right? You were probably the only female Western art owner.
Ginger Renner, who then still had the gallery in Palm Springs.
Yes.
Tom Dick.
Yes, that was you too. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting, really, when you think about it. You probably don't even think about it, but
I don't think about it.
yeah,
You're saying it now. I hadn't even thought about it.
but it is true. I mean, the opening of that component of Western art to other women, you're the backbone. You're one of them for sure, no doubt, which is one of the reasons that you're on the podcast, because you've been on my list to be on the podcast because you're critically important to understanding the whole schematic of how this business has been and run, and and your place in it, and you have a very important place in it.
Oh, you're making me feel so important. My goodness, I can't stand it.
Well, you are. And we kind of started off this whole thing about Charles Loloma, and the fact that you had a Charles Loloma on your hands and on your neck, and that you knew him. I do want to ask, what was Charles like?
I loved him dearly.
Yeah.
He was funny too. We really, we always had a good time, and he'd come to Jackson, and we'd go to the bar, and we just had a jolly good time when he visited.
Yeah. And so how do you see Western art has changed? You've been around long enough to see it, especially in Jackson Hole. You've seen some changes, right?
Well, Ted and I said, we both agreed that the sort of the beginning of the demise of the art business as we knew it was the internet. I hate to say that.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, everything changed with the internet. It became less personal, and I couldn't see how people could spend $25,000 or $30,000 on a piece of art that they're buying online or haven't seen in person. I mean, it was beyond my comprehension.
Yes.
Completely.
And do you feel that way still today? Now
I do.
That you've lived with it a long time. Have you bought a piece of art on the internet?
I do. I don't buy anything on the internet.
Yeah, because you want to see it in person.
I want to see it in person.
Yeah.
It's just like, buying a bottle of wine and not tasting it, or a bottle of tequila, not tasting it. You want to taste it and see it and everything else. I can't imagine any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to see that, because it really has changed. You're right, it's changed, but for my generation and for the further generation, that doesn't seem to be an issue. So I buy art constantly over the internet, and I sell it constantly over the internet.
But you're young. See, you're young, and you were able, for me, I do it, but I even have a problem with Zoom because, my age, I'm 90,
Yep, but here you are having a conversation with me on Zoom that will last way beyond both of us. So it's interesting that you saw it as a change. For me, I saw it as it definitely changed things for sure, but I found it as the democratization of art. Because
there you are.
Yeah, because now all of a sudden you have the ability to share ways that you never had, and to educate people that you never could. That would take, the only way they could get educated on Western art would be maybe go to Scottsdale or Jackson Hole in your case to visit and see you. But now they can, just with a click of a button, they can get tons of information and learn and see and be exposed in places maybe that they never would be. So there is this opening up of information that allows for that sharing, and that, I think galleries still definitely have their place, because once you've got that knowledge or that thirst for knowledge, you want to go somewhere and see it, right? Just like you said, you want to go to your wine tastings, those are important. So are gallery openings. But, then you look at, Mountain Trails, or Trailside, I should say, they're now an internet gallery, right? Right. They've closed.
Yes, well, they're in, and you're all in the auction business.
Yeah.
And that's how they're surviving.
Yes.
It's not the way I knew it. They're surviving with the internet and with the auction.
Yeah. So I never thought I would go into that part of the business, the auction business. It didn't seem like something I wanted to do. But the reality is I am, and I have, and I've been doing them since the pandemic. And it allows my clients another way to purchase that they want to and like to. And it allows me to compete in a different way than I had before. So just as you tried Carmel and Houston and the airport, all those cutting edge things that no one had done, you had to adjust and try to do things, to succeed and to be the best. And you did those same things as well. And I'm sure there's lots of other things you did too. I don't even know about.
Yeah. I think you've got a great future with the way things are going for you all. And I have to, I really enjoy listening to the auctions. I don't have another place on the wall like you in my house to place anything, but I do enjoy watching them.
Yes.
And I still stay up with the pricing of everything.
And why do you stay up on the pricing? Why do you find that of interest?
Well, number one, I have a big collection of art in my house.
Got it.
And I want to know if I have to go and get more insurance.
It's like watching your stock portfolio, basically.
Exactly right.
Yes, I get it. Yeah. Well, and it makes sense. As a gallerist who's been involved in those kind of things, I would imagine I will always be aware of those price structures. You have to be at, if you're actively, you have to understand what's going on because markets change and, people need to know what's going on. They depend on you being able to do those things. So I find it interesting. You clearly are still an art gallerist at heart, even if
I still am, and I've actually considered, frankly, getting sort of dabbling a bit some more, and helping. But I do help people. I get calls actually from the children or grandchildren of my clients that I sold things to.
Yes.
Who want the art.
Yes.
They have no interest in the art. And they say, we saw your label. I always made sure I had my label on the back of everything.
Right.
I'm calling you to see if you could help tell us where we could sell these things.
Yes.
And so I help them by saying, I would suggest this auction, or this auction would be better for these things.
Right.
Or go to this gallery or go to that gallery because they handle this person's work.
Yes.
And so help them,
Yeah.
I don't charge anything. I just help them.
Yes. Well, that's because, that's what you were supposed to do in life. Your role was to always be an art gallerist. You just had to do all these other things to learn different skill sets so you could be the best art gallerist you could. That never goes away.
And it's my love. Yeah, it's my love. And this is why I love the museums and involved with them.
Yes. Yes. So anything you would like to share with our audience as we kind of wrap this up? Anything that we might have missed or you think is important?
Oh, I don't think you missed a thing, dear. I'm surprised that I have this much information for you. I mean, the only thing I would share with you is that I have left a legacy in as much as I've written 4 volumes of art books for my German clients of all their art collection that I sold them.
Mm.
And I think you have a set. I think. I'm not sure. If you don't, I'll give you a set. But that was something I did well. Ted, I had to look after Ted for 4 years, so I wrote these 4 volumes.
And so that was a specific collector's collection that you talked about.
Yeah.
Thing.
It's called the Irvan and Helga Haub Collection of Western Art. And it was published by me in Phoenix in 2012.
Oh, okay.
I published it.
Oh, yes. That's the Haub collection?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I know that collection. Yes. I don't think I have the books, though. So looks like
I'm happy to give you a set if you've got room.
Oh, I've got room. Trust
Okay.
me, I got plenty of room for books. Those
Okay.
are important. Books are, my bedside is covered in stacks of books.
Oh
So
boy, I'm sure you're the same condition I'm in. They're all going to the museum, by the way,
nice.
to my collection of I've got first editions galore.
This is for Western Spirit Museum.
Yes.
Yes, very good. Well, you were delightful. You dressed beautifully. And, I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it this much because I was very nervous. I've never been on a podcast before.
Well, you did lovely.
Yeah, fun. It's sort of fun.
It is
I've
fun.
enjoyed it too.
Well, I think you get to review your life in a way that you normally would never do, right? I mean, this,
True.
it's just not the thing that happens, but, it's important to pull out all those threads so we have a sense of your place in Western American art. And it's clearly a very sizable and important one.
Yeah, and I'm serious. I'm silly because I don't know enough about it. Is this a video I'm going to be able to see or something like that?
Yeah. So, no, it's video and you can get it on YouTube. You can see it on YouTube or any platform for podcasts. So you can listen to it or watch it. So, yeah. So okay. we get to see your face forever and you're dressed beautifully. No, that's okay. Just remember you had a beautiful Loloma.
It's just my Western shirt, honey.
Yeah. All right. Well, Christine, thank you so much. I'll probably see you sometime in the fall down in Scottsdale at
yes,
Western
I'll be in
Spirit
Museum.
Museum.
I've got to get down to Tucson and see Gallery again.
Yes, we would love that. Please let me know when you're coming.
Thank you very much for thinking I was a good candidate.
You're one of the most important ones.
Oh, you're very sweet.
That's a very true statement. All right, we'll see you. Take care.